I will reopen regular council meeting number 1554. And before we go any further, I just wanted to take a moment to speak about the most recent horrific discovery at the Williams Lake residential school. And before we got into our business, I just thought it appropriate to take 30 seconds or so of silence to maybe just acknowledge, let the survivors and the families of survivors and families of victims know that we hear their grief and take a little time to reflect on the decolonization work that we have ahead of us before we go any further. So if we could just take a moment, please. Thanks, everyone. And this meeting, once again, we're not gathered, we're spread out on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lil'wat Nation. And before we get going, just to everybody understands, under the Village's Council Procedure Bylaw, councillors, staff, delegations, and the public may attend a council meeting in person or via electronic means. However, due to the increase in COVID-19 transmission and positivity rates, out of an abundance of caution, the village has closed the village's office. As such, pursuant to Section 10 of Council Procedure Bylaw 788, this meeting will be held electronically and all members of council and staff will be attending via electronic means. For those members of the public in attendance, please note that this meeting is a live webinar and is being recorded. The recording of the meeting will be available on the village's website following the meeting. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. We don't have any rise with the report. We have number 7, adoption of the minutes from regular council meeting number 1553, moved by Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising? Business arising from committee of the whole, committee minutes. It'd take us all the way down to number 12. 12A, Office of the CAO verbal report. Ms. Gilmore.
Thank you very much. I actually do not have a verbal report this evening.
Wow, there you go. Motion to adjourn. We're done here. Okay, so we're on to 12A2, which is the village of bursary policy amendment. We'll admit Ms. White.
Thank you for having me here this evening. As you've alluded to, I'm here to talk about the Village Bursary Award for 2022. Each year, the village receives applications from the local high school students who are planning to attend post-secondary education. The bursary will provide the successful student with a financial award allocated from the Community Enhancement Fund. The purpose of the bursary is to recognise students with outstanding citizenship, leadership, and volunteerism, and who also intend to pursue post-secondary education. Last year, Council made the recommendation to amend the bursary policy in a way that allows them to split the bursary award among 2 or more successful recipients in the instance that there's not a clear single recipient. And it was also recommended that we review the value of the bursary award as well, with the potential to increase it from $2,000. So what I've got in my report today, attached as Appendix A is a current version of the bursary policy, and attached as Appendix B, I've included a slightly revised policy that includes some wording that will allow for council to split the award if they see fit. Recommendation 1 from my report today is that council approve the amended policy in Appendix B, and then recommendation 2 is that council provide some direction with respect to increasing the amount of the award. I think that's everything, so please let me know if you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much, Ms. White. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Thank you. Through to Ms. White. So if we were to change the policy, how do we determine how we're going to split the $2,000 when people are applying for a grant that's worth $2,000? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
No, so I think this came about last year. We had two very strong candidates that when you kind of looked at their qualifications in relation to the application, it was very, very close between the two of them. They both had very good grades. They'd done a lot of volunteering and extracurricular activities. And so I think, you know, it was challenging for council to determine one single successful person. And so I think, yeah, the ability to be able to split it as council see fit, whether you've got two individuals that kind of equally are showing similar levels of qualifications and you split 50-50. Again, we haven't had a lot of applications over the last few years, so I doubt we'll kind of be in a situation where we're having to split it out further than maybe a top two, but we can certainly look more at, you know, some criteria there if that's what you're looking for there, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, I guess I won't be supporting this because I think in any competition, whether it's judo or school or any competition in the world, there's a second place finisher. And over the years that I've been involved with helping with the scholarship, the bursary award, every community member that puts money forward for bursaries is making the same decision that we have to make. There's one person that tops their agenda. I don't think there's been any year that we haven't had a clear winner. So I'm happy with the way it is. I think the $2,000 is the top of the bursary awards for the community. I think we're very generous. And I don't have any problem going forward, continuing to look at the finest person to receive the award. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Noble.
I would support both raising the amount somewhat and having the ability to split it between more than one person. I don't feel that a youth who's pursuing a career is competing with another youth going after a different career. I would like to support as many as we can reasonably that are putting in the effort. There's no one child that's deserving to the exclusion of all others.
Thank you. Councillor Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, I would. I feel the council having the ability to split the bursary gives a little more, can give us the support if we only have two applicants and the amount should be split 50-50. I agree with Councillor Noble's sentiments that it's not a competition. If the village can help more than one person in a year, then I think we should move forward with that. And that's the culture that the staff has shown me that we're trying to do here. I'd also be in support of raising the amount to $3,000 at this point. Considering I've seen tuition fees myself right now, $1,500, if it is split, will cover 1 year's tuition or one semester's tuition plus books. Whereas if the person gets $3,000, then it'll cover at least 2 semesters plus books.
So thank you, Councillor Zant. So you're suggesting a total of 3,000 to be split between two, 1,500 each?
If that's council's wishes, yes. Or the full
So you're
3,000 to go
bringing
to one person.
Thank you. Councillor Antonelli, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think it might be helpful for the students to know how much they're applying for, you know, whether they might only be getting half of it or the whole amount. So if we want to increase the amount and we want to help more than one student, maybe what we could do is have two slots, 2 pools of money.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel similarly. I think similarly, it's not a competition or a winner. It's let's support where we can, what we can afford to support. And it's a great connection to our youth that we want to maintain here at the village. So I'm totally supportive of just, and I agree with Councillor Antonelli, let's just keep it simple and they know what they're applying for and staff knows what they're working with. So I would support moving the fund up to $3,000 or even $4,000 and splitting that 50-50 between 2 recipients at a 50. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
I guess I have the concern here that we have 4 people applying for 2. And all of a sudden, maybe we've got 3 or 4 that are all competitive, just like we've had the last couple of years with 1 or 2. Then what are the people that want to change this up feel they want to do? Split it 4 ways? I mean, everybody that applies for these bursaries are really top-rated people, really good candidates. I just don't know how far we're going to go with this before, we can't just keep breaking this up. What do we do? Go, yeah, okay.
Any further comments? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Zant.
Well, I'll put the motion on the table to change policy to be able to split it 50-50, and then the recommendation to move the bursary up to $3,000. If council so wishes to split it.
Can we make that 2 motions?
It's your motion, Councillor Zant, so.
Yeah, we can split up motions.
Thank you.
First motion is to split it 50-50 then, we'll go with that.
If council decides,
Well,
it's up to
that's,
council.
that's the motion. So the motion is that the policy be amended to have it for two successful recipients and that it gets split 50-50.
Yep.
Sorry, did you, I'm just looking for clarity. Did you just want to have the ability for council to decide
Well,
on
the-
splitting it up instead of saying it's just for 2 or just for 3 or just for 1, just to
Well,
allow some flexibility for conversation? Or do you want to exclusively say 2 people 50-50?
My sense was that council wanted to give kids certainty of what they're applying for and just state what it is outright, but I'll look to Ryan, whose motion it is.
Well, the way I understood the policy is that we would have the ability to split it if we saw fit.
It wasn't a specific percentage. It was just a basic.
If we want to split it, that's up to us.
Yeah.
But I want that
The
ability.
motion is to have the ability to split the
If
bursary.
we council sees fit.
That's what the motion is, okay? I got Councillor Noble and then yeah, sure. Councillor Noble, then Councillor Craddock.
So we're going to be able to split it for 2, but in the occurrence that we should only have 1 applicant, are we going to double it for that person?
Would they get the whole amount, you mean? I assume. Yeah.
Sir, can I go back to the first? So we're not going to set a 50-50 or we're just going to say, so we're not looking at splitting. We're saying if council so chooses, you have the ability to split the bursary. So you could give $1,000 to 4 people if you up the budget to 4. If you get 1 applicant or 6 applicants and you only want to give it to 1, they get whatever the budget is. So you're not explicitly stating what percentage you're going to fund to each person. That will be up to you guys on each year to deliberate.
Is that how you want the motion?
No, I was just thinking if we had 2 people and we split it 50-50, if we see fit, if the other 3 to 5 applicants don't meet the grade of council decision, then 1 person gets it. But in the past, we've seen
2 or 1. Either we split it, we have the ability to split it among 2 applicants or keep it on 1 and they get the full amount.
we split it to 2 applicants if that's what council sees fit.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Noble.
I was just going to suggest that for clarity, we make it 2 bursaries, but in the chance that we only get 1 applicant, we could double.
Oh my God, I feel like we're making this really complicated here. Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, this is my full concern. We're just making this so darn complicated. We're trying to split up a whole bunch of stuff. If we stick with what we've got in place right now, 1 person gets a scholarship. I would support that, and I would support increasing it to $3,000. But if we start sitting here deciding, well, if there's only 2, do they each get 1,000, or do they get a half? Or if there's only 1, do they get all the money? That's just a ridiculous conversation. Let's get back to what we're here for.
Okay, well, I don't consider it a ridiculous conversation. I think there's a desire amongst council to be able to support more than 1 student. So we're just trying to find a way to be able to support more than 1 student. So I do agree, we don't want to make it we're making it overly complicated. And if everybody can mute when they're not speaking, because we're getting feedback, to not make it complicated, I would suggest we just say here's an amount and we could split it amongst two if we see fit, 50-50. That's it. No other
And if
comment.
there's only one, how much do they get?
The full amount. If they own, if council sees they want to give the full amount to one, they could do that or split it 50-50 amongst two.
That's all I'm getting at is right just there.
That's it. No,
That's it.
3, 4, 5, no more. Okay, that's the motion. Would somebody like to second that motion?
Can I just get some clarity around the motion? Because the amendment that's been proposed is, in the instance, council are unable to agree upon a single clear recipient of the award based upon the above criteria, council reserves the right to split the total value of the award between two successful recipients. What was put in there was two or more, but what I'm hearing council
Just
say
two.
is that just two.
Just two.
So two successful recipients. So that would be the amendment to the policy. Amendment number 1, that would be the amendment.
Correct. I got a
Okay.
mover and Councillor Zant, a seconder and Councillor Noble. Further discussion, Councillor Craddock.
So what is the amount of the scholarship that people are applying for? Because right now you don't have an amount. Because if there's more than one person, we don't know if it's going to be 2, 3, or 4 and how much money they're going to get. So what are they applying for?
Yeah, CEO Gilmore.
I think that's why we were splitting these into 2 motions, and that would be considered next. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Councillor
we're
Zant, you had amended it. So
That
we're
was-
just dealing with the split, and then
correct.
we can talk about what the percentage or what the dollar amount will be at the next resolution.
That's correct.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question on the motion. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry, did I see Councillor Craddock? Were you opposed?
That's correct.
Okay, would you like that noted?
No, it doesn't matter.
And now a second motion to increase the bursary amount to $3,000. Moved by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Thank you, Ms. White.
Excuse me, Mayor Richmond, we're getting a lot of feedback
know.
here from somebody. I don't know.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. White. Okay, so we're on to corporate legislative services, the LMLGA call for resolutions. Ms. Fraser.
My apologies. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's that time of year again where council is, where the Lower Mainland Local Government Association has issued a call for resolutions to bring forward at their annual meeting, which is held every year in May. And the Lower Mainland Local Government Association is the association that is made up of all the local governments, obviously in the Lower Mainland, and that extends out to the Fraser Valley and up to Pemberton. Under the process, members are allowed to submit resolutions to their area association for debate. And then if they are endorsed, those resolutions are moved forward to the Union of British Columbia Municipality meetings, which takes place in September. And then once, if they are endorsed at the UBCM meeting, they are forwarded on to the appropriate ministries within the provincial government for them to look at. Council has put forward in previous years, the report that I've provided provides a breakdown of some of the issues that council has brought forward through the LMLGA, and subsequently some of them have moved on to UBCM, and some were moved on to the UBCM executive, or in the case of one, the resolution was withdrawn at UBCM because it had actually already been something that had been moved forward through other formats. Those resolutions, as well as the completed resolution and the provincial response where provided, is attached as to appendix to your appendix B. So just as a reminder, the resolution should answer 3 questions. What is the problem? What is causing the problem? And what is the best way to solve the problem? And the resolution must provide a separate backgrounder, providing context to the resolution, be relevant to other local governments within the Lower Mainland Local Government Association, and have at least one whereas clause. And there's another appendix that sets out what the resolutions can look like. Just one other thing that came forward is on January 18th at the Committee of the Whole meeting, Mayor Richmond did note that he was interested in considering a resolution respecting the cost of policing for small communities as they transition up over that 5,000 threshold. So staff did do a little bit of work to determine if this is an issue that has come forward in the past. We noted that it has certainly not come forward through the LMLGA, and that might be because we're really the only community that has this impact. The other communities that are smaller in population actually have policing services agreements with their neighboring larger communities such as Burnaby and Coquitlam. So this may not be an issue that's relevant to municipalities in our area. However, I was able to find a couple of resolutions that have come forward in the past, and those are provided to council for information. The one from Fort St. John was not endorsed. It came forward last year in 2021, and it was not endorsed by UBCM. But there was a resolution that came in from Colwood around the same issue, and it was forwarded to, let me see, sorry. It was endorsed and we moved forward onto to the province or to UBCM. What we do now is council gives us some direction in terms of issues that they would like staff to do some research and prepare a resolution, and then we bring them back to council. I should note that there's a bit of a shorter timeline. Normally, we have not had to have the resolutions into LMLGA until the end of March, and they are asking for them to be submitted by March 4th this year. So we have one council meeting at which to formalize, and that would be on February 15th. Or yeah, we could possibly seek an extension. They have been agreeable in the past, but we don't know.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser. And I took a stab at the start of some wording for the resolution. But before I get into that, any questions on what Ms. Fraser just reported? Okay, seeing none. With regards to that resolution or that potential resolution, again, you know, the costs to small towns when we go from above 5,000 population, and how the change in delivery of RCMP services and funding is a huge cost to small communities. And as we trudge down that path, I think it's good to really start those or get those conversations going again wherever we can. I think that it should be more of a transitional approach. So I took a quick stab at the wording, and to me, it sounded something like, whereas the current funding increase for communities that go above 5,000 population poses a major burden on small municipal budgets. And whereas much of policing costs in many rural communities goes towards the highways and traffic and highway and traffic safety that comes from outside the community, be resolved that the province develop a new funding model or breakdown for policing costs that considers a more transitional approach, and that local government, UBC and UBCM be involved in the development of that policy. So I'm just open to comments from council if that's something people would like to support or comment on. Yeah, go ahead. Is this a resolution that we'd like to see put forward? Go ahead, Councillor Zant.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're trying to get at is that if we go over 5,000, then that's going to cost the taxpayers quite a bit more money in the end. If that's the basis of it, I'm happy to support your resolution. curious what your thoughts are on when you think we'll hit a population of 5,000.
I don't have that crystal ball. You never know with the way the world goes, but I mean, and, you know, we're certainly headed in that direction over the next few years. And yeah, that is the basis of the resolution. Fact is, you know, you end up taking, I think, on 70% of policing costs once you're over 5,000 population, and it's a huge cost increase. And again, a change in delivery. So it seems to me that it should be more as a, you know, towns should be able to grow into that a little bit more. Maybe the funding model should show more transition from 5,000 and population 10,000 or 20 or whatever it might be. But yeah, that's the basis of the resolution. So is everybody comfortable supporting that resolution?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to support the resolution.
Ms. Fraser, I read that quickly. How do you want to do it here? Do you want me to?
If you could provide it to me, that would be great, and we can get it into the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got enough for the motion for me to call vote on that now, though?
Yes, as long as all of council's, unless you wanted to read it again, if council's clear on what the wording is. I didn't catch it all.
Yeah, no, I figured as much. I just wanted to make sure council was amenable to it before I broke it down. So if everybody's supportive of that, I can clear up the wording with you after, with Ms. Fraser after. I'll look for the motion to present this resolution to LMLGA, moved by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And similar to that, I had a thought, and Councillor Caddick brought it up through the budget conversation earlier today. A lot of our fire budget goes towards responding to the highway that runs through our community, provincial highway that runs through our community and carries people from all over the province and beyond. And a lot of our fire budget goes to responding to incidents on that highway. So I think the idea is to find a way to support our fire departments financially for them to be able to do this work. So if that's reflective of what you were thinking, Councillor Caddick, I'll turn over to you and maybe you want to make that resolution.
Thanks very much, my Richmond. And I hadn't really made a resolution, but when 61% of our call outs are for motor vehicle accidents, which is not fire service within the community, but yet our taxpayers is paying for it, I would certainly like to see some type of funding model, but from the provincial government or ICBC that would help secure that funding for our community. I hate to see taxes keep going up for something that is not of our concern. It's a concern, but it's not of our doing within the community. So I'd have to think on what kind of motion we have, but I would leave it open to staff to help us with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even suggest at this point crafting that resolution because I'm pretty sure there have been similar ones that have gone through. And so we want to see how we want to fit into that. So just a motion maybe to direct staff to look into previous resolutions on this topic and potentially bring back some wording around a resolution on this.
Yeah, that would be great. I appreciate that.
Moved by Councillor Caddick, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Ms. Fraser. Sorry, any other resolutions that people would like researched or considered? Councillor Antonelli, go ahead.
Yeah, I know we had some discussions about old growth, but I didn't see it listed here. So was that just taken to one of the ministers for discussion, but not a resolution through this process?
So
I don't recall ever, we didn't bring a resolution to that effect forward pertaining to old growth in the past.
Mm-hmm.
what kind of resolution?
Well,
consider?
I don't know if in previous years that has come up as one of the resolutions through this process, but I know in our area there are a lot of people who are really interested in the topic, and I think it would be nice to put our support behind it. You know, and we've recently had correspondence on that topic. So I I think just that we could recommend to staff to look and see what motions have been placed in the past and whether we could put in one.
So around what part of old growth? Like, where would you like them to look into the resolutions? Maybe just a little more direction.
Right. Well, the concern is that there's very little left and it continues to be logged despite a real lack of public support for that. And so I guess the ask of staff would just be to look at the past lists and see, has that already been repeated many times, or can we just put in a new one or a first one?
Okay, so looking around how residents and local municipalities can engage in the process of how old growth is considered for harvest as a number one, like, is that the direction? Or is it on other practices around old growth, or is it a wider net than that?
Yeah, I think it's a wider net than that. So I don't think it should be up to municipalities to decide how much old growth is preserved. I think the province should be setting higher standards than what they have right now, because I'm sure you've all heard there's all sorts of protests going on still. Yeah, so I'd like to look at that.
Okay. Councillor Craig, did I see your hand?
Yeah, the provincial government just within the last month, I think they put in a new policy regarding old growth. So I'm not sure where we would go by this, but maybe we could get that information brought back to council so we could have that information available.
Okay. Ms. Fraser, is that good enough direction at this point? You're on mute.
Sorry. Staff is to research resolutions related to old growth forest harvesting. I mean,
Preservation.
Preservation. Okay. And that staff bring back the provincial policy that's just been issued. Okay. For information.
Does that represent your motion, Councillor Antonelli? Okay.
So
moving on.
what we would do is bring back this information, and then staff, council would develop a resolution at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And endorse it at that meeting.
Potentially.
Okay.
So I've got a mover. I don't think I asked for a seconder. Councillor Noble, further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything else for the LMLGA? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Fraser. We're on to number 13, which is bylaws. We don't have any this evening. Number 14, Mayor's Report. 2 weeks went by fast, I feel, since we last met, but I do have a couple of meetings I'd like to highlight. One was our court.
Mayor Richmond, go ahead.
Am I off track?
Where you wanted to bring back for reconsideration?
Oh, geez, I skipped right over that. My bad, sorry. B1, where is it? Mayor's Report, I see. You've got that first before my verbal. Never mind. Reconsideration of development permit number 91. So just before we get into it, maybe I get Ms. Fraser to explain the process of reconsideration, just so we're clear on how this can get brought back, and I can give a little bit more as to why.
Okay, so at the regular council meeting held on January 18th, council will recall that the motion to authorize development permit number 91 with variances and as amended was moved and seconded, but the motion was defeated. And it became a little bit apparent afterwards that, and subsequently council went to consider a second development variance or development permit with a variance similar to DP 91. And that development variance permit was referred back to staff for more work. So under the section 131 of the community charter, The mayor may require council's reconsideration on a matter. And further under section 30 of the Village of Pemberton's council procedure bylaw, it reinforces the community charter allowance that the mayor may require council to reconsider a matter. And as such, the mayor provided email in writing asking myself as the corporate officer to place this matter on the agenda for reconsideration, and it is before you at this time.
Thank you. Any questions on that portion before I carry on? Okay, seeing none, and Ms. Fraser kind of covered it. You know, the why of it was, you know, when we looked at DP 91, that variance, the motion was tabled and it was voted down, and as a result, the development permit itself was killed on that. And by the conversation that followed, it seemed like that was an extra impact that wasn't quite the intention of council. The intention was to not support the variance as it was presented. When we hit DP 92, that's where we went. We sent it back to staff to work with the applicant to revise the variance before bringing it back for consideration by council. So it seemed to me that, and I'll own my part in it when I'm for not breaking it out, but it seemed to me that we were not entirely comfortable with the results of where we got with DP 91. So my intention here today isn't to reopen that whole conversation, but simply to see if that was the case, then we could look at rescinding, it's not rescinding, sorry, reconsidering that motion and then referring it back to staff like we did with DP 92. So we'll sharpen the motion in a sec, but that was the rationale, and I'll open it for conversation. Any thoughts? Is I on the right track on this? Councillor Antonelli, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my intent through that whole process was just to have staff look at it again, rather than, you know, tossing it all away.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Zant, go ahead.
Yeah, similar to Councillor Antonelli's, I don't have a problem with the development permit. I just don't like the idea that we're looking for a variance on the 2.4 meter retaining wall. I've made it clear in my position that the bylaw says 1.2, and we should stick to that. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else has any comments? So I won't. If there's no further comments, I'm not going to dare craft a motion on this on my own. Ms. Fraser, if we wanted to go to a similar place as we did with DP 92 and have DP 91 referred back to staff to work with the applicant to revise that variance request and bring it back to council for consideration, what do we add to that?
Well, the resolution or the motion that council could consider would be that council refer development permit 91 back to staff to address the retaining wall variance before reconsideration by council.
Okay. Somebody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second by Councillor Craddock. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for catching that. I skipped right over it. Okay, so I'll skip around a little bit. We had the CAO and I had our quarterly meeting with Mr. Robert Dijkstra, the head of the RCMP for the Sea to Sky corridor. It's a good update. The new schedule is now in place, which means we have, as I mentioned, that it was coming. We have 5 dedicated officers and Scott, the corporal, in charge of the Pemberton detachment. So 6 dedicated officers. They live in town. They don't go back and forth to Worcester. They're police. They get to know our community. They get to know our people. And that's really good news. And Mr. Dijkstra is even looking at, you know, do we look at a 6th, like Scott plus a 6th constable to make sure that we're getting the service levels we deserve here. And with all that said, I'm really pleased. He seems to really he's in charge of all the sea to sky. He has his head wrapped around the whole corridor, and he really recognizes the needs of Pemberton as an individual community. We, little community chip on my shoulder every now and again. I feel we're considered last at the end of thought when we're down at the end of the corridor. He believes in a real Pemberton focus. He recognizes the uniqueness of our community and wants to see the policing reflect that. And it's really, really, really refreshing. We're going to be starting our monthly meetings again with Mr. Langtree as well, and a little more operational, talk about things as well, like the conversation around teenagers and the interaction they have with the RCMP, and getting ahead of the spring and making sure that we're setting up good relationships and good conversations with the teenagers and the RCMP. Along the lines of that engagement, Robert is actually coming up by the looks of it for, I think it's our Much Music event. It's our youth dance event at the community center later this winter. And Robert's coming up to DJ. He's a DJ. So getting involved, interacting with the teenagers should be very cool. And we talked about getting started with regular updates for all of council, so that we can all of you can get involved in the conversations and put your input in. So it was a good meeting, and they'll be coming to council before too long. Another sort of different and interesting meeting was we called it a kickoff meeting. So a little background, NHC, Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, something like that, who has done a bunch of work for the Diking District and for all of us in our emergency planning, did some extensive studies a few years ago and identified weaknesses in our flood mitigation infrastructure, identified changes, made suggestions and recommendations, and looked at different solutions as things have changed. One of the ideas that was thrown out as part of this study was the creation of ring dikes, or dikes to protect, building essentially a new diking system that connects to our existing diking system to further protect the higher density and higher sensitive areas to our valley. So this was just a way of kicking that conversation off and seeing if and how it should be even considered. So we started the meeting with a high-level approach, or a high-level overview, basically, of a history of the Pemberton Valley, right back to the straightening of the Lillooet River and the impacts that had, and then the development of our diking system, and everything that's gone on since, including the Meager Creek slide, which, as we know, the sediment increase has taken some of our dike areas from a 1 in 200 protection level to a 1 in 50 protection level, and all that sort of thing, and right down to the NHC study and this recommendation to look at ring dikes. So it was a first stab at it. The attendees were Chief Dean was on, Director Mack was on, staff from the village, and by staff I mean Development Services, Public Works, CAO, similar with SLRD and Mi'kmaq Nation and Pemberton Valley Diking District. So it was a really starting point conversation about what it would look like to consider ring dikes and how it could possibly work. A couple of, again, high-level scenarios were highlighted just to sort of start that conversation. And we looked at challenges, obviously, from cost to land to how does it work when perhaps a new dike all of a sudden protects one person, one resident, whereas on the other side of the road, it doesn't protect another as much. And how does all that work? So many challenges to look at. This was a starting point. Using that NHA study, and Kevin Clark is going to do a little bit more work to sort of define a little more specifically some of the potential routes to these ring dikes and what they would look like, and the working group will get back together on that. Did I miss anything on that, Ms. Gilmore?
No, I think you captured that well.
SLRD meetings, 26th, 27th of January. Big focus was on our first big budget crunch as well. But a few of the other highlights, the fourth quarter development application update was presented, and not surprisingly, there's a lot of activity in the region. There was a letter of regarding ALC non-farm use application, and this is from Lewa Nation for the outdoor school up the valley, which, as you know, is all the way up to Hurley and partway towards Meager. Beautiful location that hasn't been used for a number of years, and some of the buildings are no longer habitable. You couldn't even live in them. We can't use them. But Lewa Nation has put in a non-farm application to the ALC to use it for a number of things, as a base, really, though, in general, for healing, as a base for learning, for community. Some of the activities they're looking at would be, to get the land going, would be the production of hay and the sale of hay, demolish the unsafe buildings, obviously, build a sweat lodge. They like to enhance food production and do seasonal wild food harvesting up there, have youth groups, overnight healing and learning. So the board thought it was a really great use of a really great property and supported the application to the ALC for that. And hopefully that'll go through, and we'll see something like that happen. The RGS annual monitoring report came up. I won't go too far into that. And like I say, the budget was probably one of the big topics. And the budget there, similar to how we do it, but everything's very siloed there. And we tend to do the budget process in I won't say bite-sized chunks, but in chunks. And kind of like us, but again, a little bit more siloed by some of the cost centers. So this was our first look at the sorry, and I just want to grab some notes. A sec. So yeah, what we looked at was the first overview of the budget. Not a ton of new spending. There's definitely some conversation around new staffing and building the capacity at the regional district. But with an incoming CAO, there was discussion on how to provide budget, but allow that CAO to come in and make some of those decisions. But the biggest the biggest jump probably was in general government. Of note, though, the non-market change in the regional district was $395 million this year. And the market change, I believe it was about 25%. So the non-market change for a total of 395 represents a 1.23% change, which is a pretty significant non-market change and increase to the budget. So there were increases mostly to general government. There was a couple of new fleet vehicles that were due for renewal and some salaries to build capacity there. But at the end of the day, when we were done looking at solid waste, general government, those were some of the biggest cost centers. Basically for $1 million home in the SLRD, there's about $1 increase to taxation with what's been presented thus far. So like our budget, there's more to come, but what's been presented so far basically has a zero taxation increase represented for Village of Pemberton residents for the SLRD portion. And that is because the budget increases that we do see, like I say, mostly through general government and a couple other spots, like UES, is absorbed by that non-market change. So that's a really, I don't want to go too deep into their budget. You're more than welcome to, in fact, please have a look at it on the SLRD website. And when the next one comes out for the next meeting, I'm always happy and really thankful for any input other council can give me if they could look over that budget or any questions they would like me to ask on our behalf. So I don't know if there's any questions on that right now. That makes sense. Very good. I'm almost done. In fact, I am done, but I do want to end on a really positive note, and that is for those that aren't aware, or even for all those that are aware, let's celebrate the fact that Pemberton will be represented by 2 exceptional athletes in China in the weeks to come. Trinity Ellis, both homegrown. Trinity Ellis is competing at 19 years old in luge, singles and combined event. That happens, I believe, first as of February 5th or 7th, pretty early on in the Olympics through the 14th. So that's super exciting. And Ethan Hess is making a second trip to the Paralympics for para Nordic skiing. So just a huge congratulations to our youth, those two folks for, I've known Trinity and Ethan a little bit, but I've known Trinity a while, and I know the gazillion hours that she's put in, the commitment she has made to the sport, and they both have. So good luck. We'll be cheering from here, and it's just so awesome to see. And that's my report. Any council reports? Councilor Craddock, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Mayor Richmond. Pemberton Valley Diking District meeting on January 20th. A lot of the meeting was talking about the survey that were just completed. They actually had 371 people fill out the responses. And when they had the public consultation, they had 51 people attending. So they were very excited about the information that they got back. The survey results are available, but it's extensive. So I asked if we could get a copy from Kevin. He said he would prefer that if people would like to see those results and the questionnaire, that they get a hold of him and he will send them individually. He was going to print them out, but again, it's a pretty big folder, he said, so he'd prefer that. So if anybody's interested, you could have a look at that. Excuse me, one of the questions in the survey was a requirement of the ministry. Would the SLRD consider amalgamating with the SLRD? And that was just rated a little bit above yes. And I asked the question, how come the village of Pemberton wasn't included? The ministry prefers that any amalgamation is with a regional district rather than a municipality, which is not the first choice of the Diking district, but they asked the questions accordingly. Kevin also had meetings with CN to discuss the Pole Yard Dike and Arn Canal. The Little Watt regarding the GM slough and the culverts, and still having a lot of beaver issues up around the Grandmother Slough. So they're working with the First Nations to see how they can fix that up. He made comments on the Village of Pemberton Climate Action Plan and met with the Village of Pemberton and the SLRD to review the fall rain event in regard to responses and lessons learned. So he felt that was a good meeting, and some good things came out of there. At the present time, they've got 2,060 properties in the Diking District tax boundary. And going forward in 2022, they're doing a lot of discussions regarding funding options going forward to be able to continue providing services for the area as far as Diking is concerned. They're having some issues with the funding right now, and they're trying to resolve that situation. So lots of work for them to do, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Zan.
Thank you, Mayor Richmond. So the library had their AGM last week, and a few things that came out of that. There have been some new board members elected. First off, the library wants to say thank you to John Parnell, Monique Midgley, and Tracy Graham, as they have decided to step down from the board. And thank you to them for their years of service and contributions to the library. And the new board members that were elected was Treasurer Katie Hainshode, trustees Michelle Headley and Henny Schneider. So I apologize if I didn't pronounce your names correctly. Further to that, there was a note coming from the library that they have a newsletter that comes out monthly now, and they wanted to advertise that as it gives a lot of up-to-date events and going on for the library. There was a new free library erected at Chappoon, as I mentioned, by Mr. Parnell and Councillor Craddock, I believe. And let's see, what else? They have, oh, sorry, I lost my spot here. I believe they have extended their hours, and they are now open on Saturdays 10 till 6. And that is pretty much it for the library. The next meeting is this Thursday. And I have a PETUS meeting this Thursday as well. And that's about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thanks, everyone. Move on. Correspondence for action. The first one is from Ms. Nightingale, expressing concerns regarding the planned logging of old growth forest in the Upper Mackenzie Basin by the Spelkuntum Community Forest. And the recommendation is that the correspondence be forwarded to the Community Forest Board of Directors. I just to add some comment to that. I feel certainly since I've been sitting on the board, I've learned a lot in terms of how old growth harvesting is considered by the province, by foresters, and then how it gets allocated, what's allowed and what is recommended to be cut within cut blocks. Some of the old growth that for health reasons are actually due to be, or it's actually good to regenerate, but I'm not going to try to explain that because I will botch it. And that's why I think it is important that this letter be referred to the Community Forest Board, where a thoughtful response, because these are important concerns, and I want to make sure Ms. Nightingale gets a thoughtful response on this. But I do want to add that one of the resolutions that's come out of a recent meeting is to hire an executive assistant a position for the Spelkuntum Community Forest, so that, well, there's a number of work that will be on that work plan, but one of the main reasons is for public engagement, for public education, to be able to answer these questions like these. So I'm really looking forward for that position to be filled so that we could respond to these important questions. Go ahead, Councillor Noble.
I was just wondering if we could perhaps also have staff respond directly to her and inform her that we are going to be working on a resolution for the LGLMA regarding old growth logging.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that might be a little, I don't know what that resolution looks like, so I don't want to overpromise what we're doing. I'm happy to have staff respond and say that it's been referred to the Community Forest Board, and I'm happy to have council consider a resolution, but I don't want to overpromise in my response to Ms. Nightingale what exactly we're doing. I think it's important, and I'm pretty sure she's listening this evening, that she knows that her thoughts are considered, and council will look at the old growth topic as suggested by Councillor Antonelli, but this letter should be isolated and responded by the Community Forest Board, was my thought. I got Councillor Antonelli, then Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, looking at our website, I think just a little bit more communications would be helpful. So I think the whole council and staff, I think everyone's really concerned about preserving the forest, as best that we can, and, the ensuring the profits from the harvesting benefit the community, and basically all the points listed in the letter. I think that is really top of mind for all of us. And that could be reflected in the website a little bit more. So I would like to see staff work with the executive director, or maybe the executive director inform some information on our website when all that gets underway.
Yeah, 100%. I think as the executive director develops that and is able to show again how old growth is approached, how our community forest operates, and the approach is taken towards old growth, towards climate change, towards recreation and other community interests. Absolutely, that should be shared to our website. 100%. Anyone else? Councillor, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up to say that Clay Tyndall, myself and yourself all responded back to Katrina. And the letter from Clay was very detailed, very excellent letter outlining the people that he's been dealing with, all the forestry professionals. And I think that hopefully will answer a lot of the questions. And once the executive director is in place and sets up the website, I follow what you're saying, Mayor, that that's a priority for him to get the communication and information out to the public.
Thank you. If there's no further comment, would somebody like to make the motion to refer this letter to the Shpelcumtum Community Forest Board of Directors? Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence for information. I'd like to pull out number 2 really quickly. Anybody else? If not, I'll look for a motion to receive correspondence number 1 and 3. Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. I just wanted to pull out 2 just to ask the CAO if this is the same. This is regarding the green infrastructure grant stream and the renewal of that. Is this all the same criteria and stuff that we've already put in for? Or does this open any new opportunities for us?
So the current one, we're looking to apply for our water treatment facility. The deadline is February 23rd, and this one's May 25th. I'm certain that we have staff reviewing applicable applications and whether we have any that are ready. But I'm happy to, if you would consider a resolution to refer to staff.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to see and make sure that if there's any new grant opportunities that we're able to grab with what we have prepared, that we're there to do it. Would somebody like to refer this letter back to staff? Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. Late business, notice of motion. Question period. So the regular council meeting is now open for questions from the public. Please be reminded that only questions directly related to items discussed during this meeting are permitted. If any members of the public attending via Zoom webinar wish to ask a question, please click on the raise hand feature in the webinar controls, and this will notify staff that you would like to ask a question, and they will unmute your microphone when it is your turn to speak. Ms. Kennedy.
Mayor Richmond, there are no, oh, there is a raised hand. Yes, we have a question from Katrina Nightingale.
Go ahead, Ms. Nightingale. Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for including my questions and concerns in your agenda. I appreciate it. I appreciate your willingness to hear me. I also recognize that a lot of the questions that I have will be directed to the Community Forest Board, and that makes a whole lot of sense to me. But the one question I do have, and I think I'll just direct this to Mayor Richmond, because you are on the board and you are the mayor. So, and perhaps it's a more philosophical type question, but the Village of Pemberton is placing significant value on the Community Climate Action Plan, and its focus is on mitigating and reducing the impacts of climate change. We'd all agree that the indicators of climate change are being felt in a very real way in Pemberton, from heat domes to heat warnings to landslides and floods. And in light of all this, as well as in light of the old growth strategic review put out by the provincial government, I'm just wondering how the Village of Pemberton reconciles the values of stewardship and sustainability with profiting from the logging of old growth, which is imminent in the Upper Mackenzie right now. That's my question.
Sure thing. So just to be clear, I don't know if everybody's on mute. I don't know if that's Miss Nightingale, but I hear a dog barking.
Sorry, that's my dog outside.
Okay, so if it's just you, that's fine then. So, you know, the climate change and the impacts of foresting and our community forests on climate change locally is definitely a topic that comes up every board meeting. It was brought up at our last meeting and was discussed. And quick history, in case you're not aware, right now it's an interim board for the community forest, and it's a move towards a more permanent board, and that process and structure is being set up so it can be turned over. But the interim board, recognizing the importance of some of the questions you ask and around climate change in general and how our activities impact that, has been really, really important to all the members, and was brought up in the last meeting again, and talked about how it can be, how measures and benchmarks can be put into place within the procedures to make sure that climate change and the impacts are considered all along the way in terms of how our activities are conducted. So it is very important. I understand the nature of your question. One of the things that I have learned is, and again, I'd like to give you more of the detailed answer through the Community Forest Board, but you know, how the province and foresters look at the health of old growth, and there is some old, and what is considered old growth. There's a big difference between the giant logs and the 100-year-old hemlocks, and sometimes some of those trees, we're actually doing a favor in some of the old growth to remove them when we do. And those are decisions made by foresters with a gazillion times more experience than I have. And that's how the allotment decisions, you know, begins in terms of what can be given out, what should be given out to harvesters to harvest. So I know it seems a little bit contradictory, but I don't think the answer is a whitewash. No, we shouldn't cut any old growth. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think that, again, from what I've learned, is that there is some old growth that it's timely to cut them now, and there's a lot of considerations to put into it. So I don't think you can do whitewash that all old growth shouldn't be cut. And I just, you know, without going into more detail on that, I just want to assure you that these considerations are top of mind for the board and for the staff that are working on the community forest.
Thank you. So I guess my second question would be, I really appreciate hearing about the public engagement and education. It's paramount in how the community forest moves forward, which is great. And I'm just wondering, for someone like myself who would like to be much more involved in a process like this, what would you recommend that someone like me and a regular member of the community of Pemberton, who is not a special interest person, I just really love this community, and I truly, truly want to understand this process better and the Village of Pemberton's role in the community forest, what would your recommendation be for people like me to be actively involved?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, when it comes down to there are regular updates given specific to cut blocks that are identified for the upcoming harvest year, and there's engagement and information sessions around those. So hopefully those will get seen by you, and we'll make sure you know about those. But maybe to give you a better and even more complete answer to that, you know, again, this executive assistant position will focus a lot on that kind of work and how to involve the public. But I don't want to make you wait until that person is in place. Let us get back to you on that as well, in terms of how exactly you can be more involved in the process and how you can inform it. Unless, Ms. Fraser, you have anything from having worked with staff on this, you have anything you want to add to it? Yeah, there are specific engagement processes that are coming up. There will be more when that person is in that position, but in the meantime, let us get back to you on
Thank you so much.
We'll follow up.
Thank you.
Thanks for your letter. Anybody else, Ms. Kennedy?
No, Mayor Richmond, there are no more questions.
Okay, then I will look for a motion to go back in camera. Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's take 5 minutes and we'll come back in camera.
You can rise with report too.
So the rise with the report was on the acting.
Yes.
So the rise with the report is that Senior Fraser be appointed acting CAO on March 5th. And that's it. So motion to adjourn, please. Councilor Noble, seconded by Councilor Zant. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks again, everybody. Great day.
Good night all.